Hey, welcome back to another episode with Prodigious Trip. I am Prodigious Trip, and I review anything and everything. I want to talk today about the Gamecube. And I mentioned it before when I was doing the RG405 review, because there was a couple of things where you could actually emulate Dreamcast. And it's interesting that so far Nintendo has not brought out Dreamcast or not Dreamcast, I'm sorry, Gamecube. Has not brought out the GameCube for not emulation, but like a virtual console. On the when the Wii came out, one of the things that was really interesting was you had what was called virtual consoles, which was a console from like say the N64, the Super Nintendo, the NES, even I think Sega and Neo Geo, things like that. You could play some of those old games on there because that was a console virtual. It was basically just what we do with emulation now and stuff. And so, GameCube, though, was not on there. The Wii was backwards compatible with GameCube, so technically you didn't have to have it. But ever since then, you have not been able to play a GameCube game on any kind of Nintendo system. Up until the Nintendo Switch actually came out with a 3D Mario All-Star game. That came out with Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, which came out for the GameCube, and then Mario Galaxy, which came out for the Wii. Actually, I think Luigi's Mansion came out for the 3DS. I could be wrong about that. I might, if you want to let me know in the comments below. Luigi's Mansion came out for the GameCube, but other than that, you really have not been able to play any kind of GameCube game on any of the any system. And again, I'm not sure if Nintendo just did not like the GameCube or what, because again, Mario Sunshine even wasn't a great game, and the only thing that you could do was, again, if you want to emulate something, that's pretty much the only way you could play any of the GameCube games, unless you still had a GameCube or a Wii. But it's funny because Nintendo really doesn't talk about GameCube games or anything like that. So I think that GameCube failed in a lot of ways. Nintendo has always tried to be revolutionary with everything that they do. The GameCube was actually the first Nintendo thing to use, or the first Nintendo console to use discs. Up until then, it was all cartridges. And even since then, since the Wii U, we went back to cartridges. The Switch uses cartridges. There's no disc thing or anything like that at all. And it wasn't even when the GameCube came out, because it was like the PS2 and the Xbox, I think, were the competitors. And everyone was like, oh yeah, the GameCube, all right, GameCube's coming out with discs, so now we can watch DVDs just like we can on the Xbox, and we can rip music and play CDs. No, the GameCube had like, their discs were like so small. I think it was the size of an MP3 disc, which even that I don't think lasted very long. But you couldn't watch a movie or anything on a GameCube, which was fine. I could care less. I had a DVD player, so I really didn't need anything else to play anything on. So I just played the GameCube for what it was. It was just playing games, and a lot of the games. I think here's the bad thing about the GameCube. The system itself was not bad. The system itself was actually really good. You could actually play stuff online. It had an internet connection if you had an Ethernet cable and connected, because I don't think a lot of stuff was Wi-Fi yet back then. They had there was an adapter you could buy that would connect underneath the GameCube and allow you to play Game Boy Advance games. That was kind of cool. I think you could actually buy a screen that would attach to the GameCube, and you could, I guess, play the game. It wasn't like portable. That was the problem. I'm like, what's funny is it had a handle. Yes, the GameCube had a handle on it. It looked like a little lunchbox. But for the system itself was not bad. The games were, and that's the bad part about the GameCube, was Nintendo tried to make some of their games how do I put this? I don't know, environmentally friendly, or try to make it connect to, like Mario Sunshine. When you think about Mario, you think, all right, he's going to go through the Mushroom Kingdom, save the princess, jump on turtles, you know, kill the bad guys, fight a big turtle dragon looking thing, you know. When he came out with Mario Sunshine, you were given a water pack and told to go to the island of Delfino and clean up all the pollution. I know what you're thinking. I thought it too. I was waiting for Captain Planet to show up and be like, the power is yours. But no. The water pack was an interesting idea. I get it. It was something new. So it wasn't like, you know, Nintendo, again, was trying. But it just... It didn't hit the mark that I think they were trying to go for. Again, Luigi's Mansion came out, and I think that was one of the first games that just had Luigi as the main character to play as. And so everyone's like, oh, cool, let's play a game as Luigi. And you weren't playing a normal Super Mario game. Luigi was given a vacuum cleaner to suck up ghosts. You were kind of like pretty much the maid of like some giant hotel. And you had to go around and clean up a mess. So again, the games were just very hit and miss. And one of the games I had was Double Dash, Mario Kart Double Dash. The Mario Kart games have always been great, have always been awesome. You always had like a lot of characters to choose from, a lot of items that are always fun to get. But one of the bad things about the Double Dash game was, if you wanted a certain item, you had to be a certain character. And that, a lot of people hated that. I hated that. If you wanted to get like the 3 red shells, that's where, you know, the homing, they're the heat-seeking ones, so they'll automatically hit somebody, whoever's in front of you. And I was like, all right, I can be Toad, and I can get the my 3 red shells. No, it was a very specific item, and you had to be, I think, Paratroopa or Koopa Troopa. You had to be one of those guys, and that was one of their main items that you could get. And I'm just like, you had to be a certain character to get that, and I really didn't like that. If you were Mario, I think one of your main things you could have gotten, or one of the main items, was a fireball that you could throw ahead of you, which was fine. Again, you know, the game itself wasn't too bad. I mean, again, the graphics, everything was updated, so it was pretty good. You could actually play with a friend who could drive the cart, and you could throw the item. So, again, a 2-player kart game, that's pretty cool. Then you could switch and be like, I don't want to drive anymore, I'll fire, you drive. So, again, very interesting game. But the item parts is what really sucked. And, again, there was just, you know, besides, I think, some of the Legend of Zelda games, I couldn't really tell you a lot of great games that came out for the GameCube that I was just like, oh yeah, I still want to play those today. But I mean, again, like I said, Super Mario Sunshine, it just failed on so many levels. Again, these were games that, you know, you're hoping would really come out to be the next like awesome game. But there was a lot of stuff that the GameCube did great. And one of the things they did great was the GameCube controller has got to be, I think, Nintendo's greatest thing that they ever did. And I say greatest controller because the GameCube controller has become the controller for Nintendo. When the Wii came out, again, you could hook up I actually still have my original GameCube controller. Yes, my original GameCube controller. I still have this one. It still hooks up. It still works. There is an adapter that you can get that allows you to hook this up to your Switch, so you can actually play it with this. I do have the actual Switch, because it'll tell you right here, Nintendo Switch, so it'll actually hook right up to it wirelessly, which is fine. I have no problem with this. But if anybody else wanted to play wirelessly too, and they didn't like the Joy-Cons or whatever, they still have my original GameCube controller. And a lot of people love the GameCube controller. I know the Wii had a Wii Pro controller. There was a Wii U Pro controller. There's a Switch Pro controller. But for the most part, if you are a Nintendo fan, you grew up with this, the GameCube was the controller. After I think the Nintendo 64 controller, everyone was just like, the Nintendo 64 controller, again, it looked like a spaceship. It had like, it looked like you had your cockpit and then you had like two wings to shoot stuff or whatever. It was very awkward to hold because you had the joystick in the middle and your D-pad was on the side. At least with this layout for the GameCube, it is the same kind of a layout for pretty much any kind of controller. You have your thumbsticks in the same spots as a D-pad as well as your button layout. Same thing with your triggers and everything else too, which is fine. I had no problem with the fact that there's just a giant, A button and all the other buttons are kind of, it's still in the same vicinity. So it really doesn't have a big difference if you're playing it. The C stick does not have the thumbstick oh, this is the original. I wonder if it actually does for this one. Yeah, this has the button configuration, so you can actually press it in, and that's another way to play games. Same thing on this one. It has the thumbstick. The GameCube didn't have that, but it's still like you can still use it, and it'll still help. You can still play your games on it. Other than the controller, they did come out with some games that I think it maybe have come out for all the systems. The Dreamcast came out, I think, right before the GameCube. Sega Dreamcast was like the last console for Sega. And it came out, I think, too early. A lot of people were saying that. Like, if they had just waited, then they could have had their console could have had more competition, probably survived, and Sega kind of went under and now just makes games. So all their characters and all their games then became up for grabs, and now and then they were shared so that the Xbox and the GameCube could all play like Sonic games now too. So I actually have it on my Xbox right here. I have Sonic Adventure 2, which was, again, one of the best Sonic games in my opinion. I have it just set up just to, I'm not going to play it right now, but it's a fun game to play, and I know my son loves it. But again, it came up, you could play it on the GameCube, you could play it on, I think you could play it on the PlayStation. I might be wrong, but I know that a lot of stuff came out for the Dreamcast was now available third-party style for pretty much all the systems. But again, some of the stuff that GameCube did very well was Super Smash Brothers was probably like when Super Smash Brothers came out for the N64, and it was such a different kind of fighting game. Up until then, you had games like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. You had games, I think Dead or Alive was up before then too. Again, these were characters that, one or two people could play at a time, fight each other. Again, you know what those games are. This was the first time where you had 4 characters that could play at the same time. And not only could they play at the same time, but they could fight each other. They could it was just so much fun. And then when the GameCube came out, they upped the ante for it. Again, they were trying something new. For some of these other games, like Luigi's Mansion and Mario Sunshine and Double Dash, those failed completely. But Melee was like their baby. And it was just like, I remember having competitions in college where people would do tournaments with this game because you could unlock so many characters. They had so many different things you could play. Again, DLC wasn't out yet. There was no such thing as downloadable content. You could still unlock characters by doing certain things. I think one of the things that sucked the most was if you wanted Mewtwo, because that's where you could get Mewtwo for the first time. If you wanted him, you had to play over 70 hours of gameplay to unlock Mewtwo in Melee. And again, everybody played these games for hours, so it was pretty much easy to unlock Mewtwo. But, oh man, these games were that game was just amazing. And they made a bunch of third-party games for the GameCube that I think is what made the GameCube a fun console, not a great one. I remember playing Phantasy Star Online with my cousin Chuck. We had the week off for college. It was, I think, either spring break or it was the Thanksgiving week. We played Phantasy Star Online, episode 1 and 2 for the Gamecube. That was one of the games that came out for the Dreamcast, that came out for the Gamecube as well, because you could play it online. We didn't play it online, but we just played it offline. But it was, oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It was I think it was an RPG. But it played in real time, which I liked better. And the graphics were great. It was just fun to play. The levels were amazing. The characters, the environment. It was just so much fun. It wasn't a first-person shooter. You saw behind your character, so I think it's a third-person view, I think. And you could level up your weapons, level up your... It was called a mag. I think it was called for like magic something, but it emitted a photon energy thing or whatever. It was really cool because you could have one that looked like either like 2 missiles on the side, or it could look like a like a hamburger or something. Some of the weapons you could get in the game were like a frying pan and a dragon claw, and I mean it was a fun game to play. And I just remember playing, like I said, I wasn't playing Nintendo games. These were games that were like third party or something. I was playing a SSX Tricky. That was a fun game, a snowboarding game. A buddy of mine had an Xbox, and so we would play that at his house. We'd play SSX Tricky at his house, come over to my house and play it on the GameCube. So it was always a fun time. Again, that I think came out for all the systems. I think it was EA Sports did that one. That was a fun game. Although I think, yeah, Star Fox came out for the GameCube as well. And again, they tried something new and it really didn't do too well. Star Fox Adventures. Star Fox wasn't really a big kind of thing for Nintendo. They had Star Fox 64. They had, I think, Star Fox 1 for the Super Nintendo. And in Japan, there was Star Fox 2. And I think you can actually play Star Fox 2 now on the Switch for their Super Nintendo Virtual Console, which is cool. But they came out with Star Fox Adventures where you weren't flying around in your ship shooting bad guys or anything. You were out on a dinosaur planet with a staff hitting... It kind of seemed like a Legend of Zelda, but you were playing a Star Fox kind of game. And it did have its moments where it was kind of fun. I had to admit, I was like, this actually wasn't too bad. But it wasn't like the Star Fox game that you wanted to play. They also came out with Star Fox Assault, which again, you're in your ship shooting, blah, blah, blah. But it just did not do what they wanted to do. So, again, a lot of GameCube games were just very, they fell apart. And the system itself, like I said, was very good. And again, it probably would have done better if they could have played music or movies or something like that. But Nintendo has never been into trying to do something like a gimmick like that. You know, they've always been trying to do something new, like even like when the Wii came out, that was more revolutionary, trying to do the motion controls and play games like that, which is fine. I've never really been into stuff like that. I'd still play a game like with the GameCube controller on my Wii. So I really didn't like try to play a lot of games with the Wiimotes and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so I don't know if Nintendo just doesn't want to talk about it or just like, hey, you know, all these games really didn't do too well, so we're not going to even mention them or let you play them anymore. Again, as far as I know, Mario Sunshine is the only one that came out that they've talked about. Same thing with this Luigi's Mansion. I know they made another Luigi's Mansion, so it had a following, and I can see why some people may have liked it. It wasn't for me. I'm definitely not. I didn't like Luigi's Mansion. Again, there's other consoles too that Nintendo has made that they never ever talk about, like the Virtual Boy. Oh boy. I'm not going to go too much into that. The Virtual Boy came out, and it was just like I think it was between the Super Nintendo and the N64, and it did not last at all. Like, it was, the design of it was so weird because it looked like goggles, but it had like a stand, but there was no way for you to really play it. You couldn't just hold it and stick it up to your eyes to play or anything. You had to put it on a table or something, then stick your face into it, and then play like that. And they've never been able to like bring that out for a virtual console or anything because of the way that it was designed. So actually, I'm pretty sure that if you could, you might be able to hack the Oculus and put the virtual console of the Virtual Boy on there maybe. But that's the only other kind of way I think you could ever play something like that. And even then, it didn't have a whole lot of games to play. And it didn't have anything that people were like, oh man, I got to play this. It was just, it came and went. Like, no one even talks about it. They don't even, again, they don't have any kind of, thing to play like a virtual console or anything. And a lot of rights got sold too after the 64. So even the GameCube couldn't keep up with some of their games that they had. Like, I think Rare now is owned by Xbox, or yeah, Rare is owned by Xbox now, but there's a couple of games still that Nintendo has the character rights to, like Donkey Kong. So they can still play some of their old school Donkey Kong games, like from the Super Nintendo. I know you can still play on the Switch, but I don't think they ever let you play Donkey Kong 64. That came out for the N64. And again, the 64 had so many games that I liked. It had again, besides, Mario 64 and Mario Kart, they had Star Fox, they had Kirby, they had Jet Force Gemini. That was a fun game. Some of the games I had, again, Donkey Kong 64. You just pretty much put anything, something, and then 64, and it was for the N64. But again, the GameCube itself was a timeless wonder. Again, things that still hang around from it are amazing. And Super Smash Bros. Has just grown and grown since then. And I have to say it's because of the GameCube that game became so much more than what it was for the 64. And so, again, I'm not saying the GameCube sucked. The console itself was great. But the games that they came out with, especially the first party for Nintendo characters and stuff, really failed a lot. But I know they did come out with some really great games. Like the Zelda series still thrived. They came out with Twilight Princess. They came out with the Wind Waker. They came out with Wind Waker. They came out with, I think Skyward Sword was for the Wii. So I don't want to say anything. I think Four Swords came out for the GameCube. There's a lot of stuff that, like I said, the GameCube, it did for a lot of good it did. For some games, a lot of things that just failed, and so they never really try to, bring some of those games back. Because I think they were talking about doing Twilight Princess or porting it over to the Switch, which again was a great game. I love Twilight Princess. It was one of those games I never beat. I didn't beat that one, and I never beat Majora's Mask. And if you ever played Majora's Mask, you know what I'm talking about too. If you played it, you're like, all right, you have to play it consecutively, because if you stop playing it for a week, or like I think I stopped playing it for like a month because I had some other stuff to do. And when I came back to it, I forgot where I was, which dungeon did I do, and you lose your place, and you're just like, oh. And even though you save it, it just, the way that the game is set up, you have only a couple of days to actually play certain places, and then you go back in time. And if you lose your place, you're lost, and you'd have to start all over again. And I said, oh, screw it. I'll do it again later. So I remember playing it on the 3DS. Same thing happened. Never beat it. But it was okay. It was one of those sequels from Ocarina of Time. And Ocarina of Time, I beat so many times. I love that game. That was the go-to game. So, again, that was for the 64. But, the GameCube games, it's still out there. It's still a thing. Hopefully, Nintendo will remember some of those really good games and bring those out for, Virtual Console, or if they lost the rights to them, maybe Xbox or PlayStation can get some of those games to bring them out. Because again, the third-party games were great. I remember playing the Spider-Man. I think it was the first Spider-Man movie game came out for GameCube. At least it was a Spider-Man game. It may have been just a Spider-Man game. I don't know if it had to do with the movie or not. that was a fun game. But I think it also came out for the Xbox and PlayStation. So whichever system you liked the most, you could play it on. GameCube. Nintendo's always been my thing. So that's why I liked it. I wanted to talk about it because I was like, I know I mentioned a little bit of it when I was doing the RG review, and I wanted to make sure that I explained most of what I was trying to say about GameCube. So again, really good. Hit and miss with the games. The console itself just needed to be a little bit better. Other than that, I think that was it. Like, there wasn't really too much stuff about the GameCube that I'm remembering that was so, awesome. Like I said, now, also too, most consoles since then will allow you to play up to 4 players. So that may have been because of the N64. So I might be wrong, but I know that at least you can now play 4 players usually onto one console because of, I think Nintendo started it. So, good for Nintendo. I'll always be a fan. But there are some games, like I said, I really didn't like. Some games I really do like. And I'm like, I wish I could play those again. But outside of emulation, it's almost impossible. So here's hoping that Nintendo will realize it. A lot of people are disappointed that you can buy some of the games on the Virtual Console for the Switch. I mean, if you did that, I would buy some of these games again just to play it again. And yeah, you have the whole thing where you can just play them for free, technically. Not free, but if you have the Nintendo Online thing, you can play them over and over again. But I would love to play them offline and wherever I'm at, without having to worry about going online. So, like the Xbox, I have so many games I've bought from pretty much the past. Or old school games instead of just having some of the newer games and stuff. I do have the Xbox Game Pass, but for the most part, I bought most of my games. They were older games, and I was just like I said, Jet Force Gemini, you can actually get what's called it came with a game called Rare Replay. And it had a mess of other games on it, like Perfect Dark, that also came out for the GameCube. Or not the GameCube, it came out for the N64, but Rare, finally, I don't know what they did, but I guess they were bought out by Xbox, so you could play it on there. And same thing with GoldenEye. That was a strictly N64 game. I don't think they had a first-person shooter game for the GameCube. I can't remember if Metroid Prime was a GameCube game or a Wii game. But, I mean, that was again, there wasn't a whole lot of GameCube games. I keep talking about N64 because that was like the best console, in my opinion, so far. Next to the Switch. I love the Switch. But yeah, so those are just some of my thoughts of, Nintendo and their GameCube and their systems and games. So I'm Prodigious Trip. I'll catch you later. Peace out.